Santiago, and I know I've been gone for a while. This has been a crazy month. This is the month of, coming into the month of October. September and October is usually our craziest month. Our kids are all in all these activities. Kathy and I are super busy, and that's just one of the things that happens. So plus we have the 30-day challenge, and I got so many people coming to me asking me for one-on-one consultation. So this is one of the things I kind of wanted to bring up because somebody had asked a question about self-sabotage, and this is an awesome topic, but this is really something that really depends on each specific person. Okay, we all have different issues in our lives, and sometimes when we accomplish something, and what I'm talking about is when we accomplish losing weight. Okay, and what happens sometimes is that when you lose, I don't know, let's say 10-15 pounds, and what can happen after that is that you feel good, you feel, you know, like you accomplished something, and all of a sudden you start gaining the weight back. Okay, so why does that happen? Why does these things continue to happen time and time and time again? So some of the things that can be as simple as just picking the right types of foods. I mean, you have mentioned that you like your nuts and you like to enjoy them, but when you start losing the weight, you start eating too much of it, and it's resulting in more of the weight that comes back. And obviously you already know about how tough it is on your digestive system. Even though it's raw, it's still tough, and I understand that because I have to minimize how much of the nuts that I consume. And this might be not as big as an issue for someone who's coming right off of the processed foods and all that kind of stuff. So, but try to minimize how much you're eating when you're consuming those nuts. I mean, you already know this, but the key thing here is that a good way to avoid this problem is, one thing, realize you already know what's happening. Okay, you know what's going on. You know the cycle. Okay, and this is a dangerous cycle because once you've accomplished that particular goal, or that, you know, whatever that may be, let's say you lost 5 pounds, it doesn't really matter, and you want to reward yourself, or you might be just burning more calories. Okay, so when you're burning more calories, you also want to consume more calories. It just kind of goes hand in hand. So it's important to try to pick the right types of foods and try not to eat too much of the foods that's more higher in fat content. Now, this is going to be something completely different for someone who wants to gain weight, who is really skinny and trying to put on the weight. So try to be conscious of, okay, saying, oh, okay, good, I've reached, you know, my 10-pound mark. Okay, this is where you put your alert sign. This is where you say, okay, this is where I normally screw up. So I have to be on point. I have to be on top of my game for the next week, or at least take it day by day. So that way you say, okay, this is where I mess up. This is where I mess up, and I have to make sure that I am doing the right things from that point on to not go back into the same cycle. So it's just a matter of trying to become more aware of what happens when you reach a particular goal. When you reach that particular, like I said, whether it be 20 pounds, whether it be 10 pounds, it really doesn't matter, because when you reach that point and you know what's going to happen when you fall back and you start eating some of the, you know, whatever heavier foods, then you're going to gain that weight back. Okay, and sometimes you might slack off a little bit on the exercise. Okay, don't stop altogether. And I know, especially for everyone doing the 30-day challenge, we're coming down to the last 2 days, so don't think, okay, I can just stop everything and do what you were doing before. Okay, this is the biggest mistake that people make, no matter what kind of diet you're on, or what kind of, you know, it doesn't really matter, because sometimes when people get into a so-called diet, okay, and then they reach their goal, right, and then the problem is, once they get off that diet, there's no plan to keep that going as a part of their lifestyle. This was why, you know, the word diet is just a, you know, a terrible word, because this is not a diet, this is a lifestyle. Even though this is, you know, the 30-day challenge, that's something different, but it's a step in a journey, because what you're doing is you're taking the steps to change your life into a more healthier lifestyle. Okay, so when you start doing all the right things and you start accomplishing your goals and you start losing your weight and you're like, oh, okay, great, I can just do whatever. No, big mistake. Okay, so many people do this time and time again. I don't know how many times I've seen people and they're like, oh, so, yeah, you know, it's so awesome, you know, I lost all this weight and, you know, now I'm going to go out and celebrate. Okay, if you want to celebrate, try to find different ways of celebrating instead of having some fatty foods, you know, especially the processed stuff. But you know, some of you guys out there are going to reward yourself with some pizza or something like that, and that's the quickest way to get the fat on the chin and the fat on the guts and the hips. You know, that's the quickest way to do it. So be careful with those kinds of things. If you want to reward yourself, you know, try to reward yourself by going out and getting yourself a nice outfit. You know, get yourself a nice T-shirt for you guys, a muscle shirt, whatever. And sport it. Reward yourself for that. For all you ladies, you know, get yourself a nice, let's see, you know, a nice beautiful outfit, you know what I'm saying? You know, very sexy, you know, you're looking very nice, you know what I'm saying? So reward yourself for something like that. Go out and, I'm not saying you all have to go out and just go on a shopping spree. No, don't go on a shopping spree. Just reward yourself, okay? Maybe you can reward yourself by going out for, dedicate half a day of just you alone. Take a walk out in nature, go to the beach, go to the take a walk on a stream, go walk in a park, something where you can reward yourself in a different way, where you're saying, okay, I've accomplished something that I've been wanting to accomplish, and now I want to take that and reward myself and just become more connected with who you are. Okay, because this is a journey. This isn't just something you're going to do for 30 days, 90 days, or, you know, for however long it takes you to reach your goal. And then you say, okay, all bets are off now. I can just do whatever and have a good time. You have to be really careful with that, because so many people, I've seen it, I don't know how many times, you know, people are on Jenny Craig, or people are on Weight Watchers, or people are on the Atkins, or it doesn't really matter what it is, but you know, I don't know how many times I've seen it where they do this for a certain period of time, they lose the weight, and then they gain it right back because they go right back to what they were doing before, because there's no plan to make it their lifestyle. It's got to be your life. This is not just something to, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds and then that's it. You go back. No, that's not the right thinking. Okay. Now the other thing is getting in the deeper issues when you're talking about, you know, somebody who might be using this barrier of fat, and I don't want to say it like that, but you know, it's hard for me to describe, as a protection method. Okay. This gets a little bit deeper into, sometimes, you know, some people have gone through some abuses in life, and for example, they don't like the way guys look at them, you know, because they're looking at them because, you know, they might be sexy or whatever, and they're like, oh, I don't want that. And so I've seen it so many times where there's this subconscious thought of purposely being heavy so that they don't get looked at. And this is something that this really goes deeper into some issues that have to do with abuse. I don't want to go into all that kind of stuff, but to really understand that what happens is you're having this layer of protection on you, and then when you lose the fat, all of a sudden you feel vulnerable. You feel, oh my God, somebody's looking at me, somebody's looking at me. And then right there, it's like, you know, their mind is telling them that they're vulnerable, and then someone's going to come after them. And that's another huge issue. And then they go right back to the foods and start putting on their protection, putting on that wall, that barrier, okay? Because it's a way to protect themselves. But the key is to learning and understanding what it is that and everyone's going to be different, so not everyone's going to have the same situation. So it's kind of hard for me to really, you know, give specifics, because everyone is different. But for that kind of situation where you're purposely putting on the weight to create a wall and a barrier as a protection, okay, that is one of the hardest things to deal with, okay? But it can be done. You can accomplish it. You just have to realize what's happening and deal with the subconscious. So I don't want to get into deep with this one, guys. So I want to wrap this up, guys. So again, be conscious about what you're doing. Choose the right foods, reward yourself in the nice way, and keep on doing what you're doing. This is your lifestyle, okay guys? So I'll see y'all next time on the Raw Food Muscle.